Okay, I'm really glad to see you here. We're going to have to go through some basic starter stuff first, but think of it like this. This is the first step on our first edit project. We're going to perform a full picture edit and a basic audio edit on a short film. We'll get there, but we need to set a few things up and go over some basic things that DaVinci Resolve does a little differently. And first, we're going to talk about the internal databases DaVinci Resolve uses to save its project files. Now, I know that databases don't sound exciting, but bear with me. This is super important. Resolve does not save project files the way you might expect. Once you save a project in Resolve, that project does not appear anywhere on your computer like you'd expect from something like a Word document or a Premiere Pro project file. Resolve uses internal databases to save and manage its projects, and that means that, by default, you must access your projects by opening the software first. Think of it like having a video game save file. You need to boot up the Outer Worlds before you choose which of your saves to play this evening. What we're going to do is go over how we make a new database and how to manage them so that we can always keep track of our project files and never lose anything. When we first open DaVinci Resolve, there can be an option to take a guided tour. If you'd like to do that, then go ahead and come back after you've finished. But we're going to cover all of the same things, so skipping it is fine. Once you're done, we're met with the project panel. This is where we access and manage all of our saved project files, and it's where we're going to take a look at our Resolve database and possibly set up a new one. First, we need to understand where our default database is. It's always on the same drive that Resolve was installed on. This is usually the boot drive, and that's okay most of the time. But if you have a very small or full boot drive, then it may well be worth setting up a database in a different location. For those who are not familiar with IT, the boot drive is the drive your operating system is installed on, and by default it's called the C drive when you take a look in Windows Explorer. If you're on a Mac, then you need to check the About This Mac option, and it will tell you what your startup disk, which is the same thing for Mac, is. We're going to take a look at how to set up a new database, just in case we have issues with the default location. First, in the upper left, there is an icon that allows us to see a full list of all of our current databases. Now, I teach this lesson a lot in the film school, so I've done this quite a few times up here, you can see. We have our default database, and I want to stress that most of the time it's okay to use the default here. As we add more databases, they appear on the left, and you can see that I've added quite a few before now. So let's set up a new one, just so we know how this works. I am going to click the New Database button, and I need to click on the Create button here, not Connect. Connect is for trying to connect to a database that already exists on a drive. We need to make a new one, so we will click Create. I'm going to leave it on the disk type because PostgreSQL is only for servers, and then I'm going to give it a name. A database can only contain lowercase letters and numbers. You cannot have any spaces. You cannot have any non-alphanumeric characters in there. It's only lowercase letters and only numbers. So I'm going to call this one Demo 5. And then in location, I need to choose where I am going to create it. So I just need to click in here once, and then I need to make a new empty folder. Now, if I go into this folder, I created this earlier, so it's completely empty. Otherwise, you can right-click, make a new folder, or the Mac equivalent. I think there's a new folder button in the lower left for Mac. So I'm going to select my empty database folder and hit Select Folder. Once this is done, I will hit Create. Need to give Resolve a second to catch up. There we go. And here we have Demo 5, the database that we have just created. So now any projects that I make with this database open, and I open a database by double-clicking it, A big theme in Resolve is that whatever we have currently open, selected, or active is outlined in orange, so we can tell that this is the active database down here. And now I can start to save projects into this new database. I'm going to go back to my default because I don't need to do this. My boot drive is fine. I just double click back onto this database, and here we can now see all of these project folders. Once that's done, I will click on this icon again to hide my database column. Now again, most of you should be fine with the default location. Only do this if you have a reason to do this. But sometimes things go wrong with permissions, or the boot drive can have a small capacity, and it's best to make a new database then. Once you have a new database, you need to make sure it's open before you start or import a project, just like we saw a second ago. Right, I accept that that's a little awkward at first, but it's also super important to understand. In the next lecture, we're going to see how to bring an external project file into Resolve and start getting our machine ready for our first edit. So click on through to the next lecture once you're ready. There's one more thing to cover before we make a proper start on this, and that is taking a look at Resolve's preferences and setting up our Scratch disk location. Now, a Scratch disk contains all kinds of temporary files and preview files and proxy files sometimes that help us remain at high performance when using Resolve. We're just going to take a quick look at how we set our Scratch disk location. So what we're going to do is go up here in the upper left to where it says DaVinci Resolve. We're going to click on that, and then we're going to left click on Preferences. Now, if you're not seeing this exact same window as me right now, do not worry. You can do this from any window or panel in Resolve. If you want to see this one, then down here at the bottom on the left-hand side, there is an icon that reads Media. Left click on that once and you will appear on this screen. We're going to go up to DaVinci Resolve, hit Preferences, and here I have a window explaining where my Scratch disk is. So basically Resolve uses the first file location or the first storage location in this list as a Scratch drive. That's where it puts all of the temporary stuff. It's where it puts all of the previews, the peak files, the cache files, all of that good stuff. We'll go over all of that in more detail in a later project, but for now you just need to know where to place this drive. Now, if you are working on a laptop and you only have a single internal drive, you do not have to make any changes here. If you are working on a desktop and have a dedicated Scratch drive, and that is typically an SSD drive that is set to being, well, Scratch for software and nothing else, then we can go through how we make sure Resolve caches to the correct disk just now. So, what I want to do is I want to remove whatever default storage location is here, and then I want to hit Add. I'm then going to navigate to my E drive and to the Scratch drive that I set up, and I'm going to hit Select Folder. The way Resolve works is that it will default to using this first storage location on this list as the Scratch disk location for every single project by default. We can change this on a project by project basis, and we will look at that on later projects once I have made that module content. But for now, this is enough. Like I said, if you have an internal drive or just one internal drive, you do not need to change anything here. I strongly suggest that you do not do this with an external drive. A cache disk or a Scratch disk must always be connected to the machine. If you boot Resolve up and you have removed its cache disk, it is going to have a panic attack. Right? So again, you only need to do this if you have more than one drive, and it is a very fast drive like an SSD. You will not stand to gain much out of having a standard eSATA or spin disk drive as your scratch or cache drive. So if you want to do that, then go ahead. In most cases, it's not necessary for small projects. If you're on a laptop and only have one drive, clearly nothing to be done. So just make sure that this is the case. Now, once I hit save, it is going to give me a warning. If I change anything like that in the preferences, if I change my default cache disk location, then I need to shut Resolve down and reboot it. So if you have changed your cache disk location, go ahead and do that just now. Shut down Resolve, open it back up again, open up this project, and we will finally start by taking a good look around the media panel, which is where we are right now. So click on through to the next lecture. Okay, before we dive right in, first a little chat about the general approach to post-production. A lot of beginners just jump right in, bring their material in, don't organize it, and go to work on a messy timeline until they have something presentable. I know you're expecting me to shoot this down, but for very short projects, a similar approach is actually fine. Similar, though. Improvements can be made. This course is going to have a strong focus on what is termed workflow. A workflow is the series of steps taken to progress a project from one phase of production to the next and to eventual delivery. And there is a particular workflow to post and editing. First is the assist or wrangle phase. We don't start editing immediately. I know that sounds boring, but it's for the best. We first review our material, and this takes time. All good editing comes from a familiarity with the source material. The assist phase, and this is usually carried out by an edit assistant or data wrangler, is an essential part of the organization of a project, and it's when we get all our ducks in a line. It is boring and it is repetitive, but it is an extremely important part of post, as you will see. In earlier projects in this course, I've done varying levels of this for you, but as you progress, you will have to do more and more for yourself. Next is the first assembly. This is when we go through our footage and begin to build a basic framework of our edit. We don't dive into making detailed and finessed edits right away. Just like in drawing, we block out our big details first, and then we can go ahead and do all the fun, detailed stuff in a later pass. Our first project will see us performing a first assembly, second pass, and basic audio edit on a short film. We then have the other passes of the edit, and this is really when the detailed finishing gets started. We get our timings just so, refine our dialogue scenes. This is when we get everything in just the right place. Once we finish this, we are at picture lock, and this is when an edit is typically passed on to the sound, effect, and VFX people working on the project. We'll cover this kind of handover later in the course. The important thing is that once you are at picture lock, you have finished your edit. You can no longer go back and change your cut, because that pulls the rug out from under anyone else working on the project further down the chain. The picture lock is the end of the offline edit. It's important to understand this. A small tweak throws the sound out completely, and that means that the sequence will have to have the grade transferred to it and new changes graded as well. Farting around after picture lock is a big no-no. Once you're locked, you're locked. And then there's the final phase for most projects in this course, the audio edit. Now, we're not training to be audio specialists in this course, but we are going to cover a fair amount of audio. This is because one of the most commonly lacking creative and technical skills in the media industry is sound, both on production and in post. Having a solid understanding of audio is going to put you at an advantage, believe me. So we'll be covering enough for you to perform reasonable audio edits with the edit and cut panels in Resolve. Once the audio edit is done, you would typically hand over to the composer and then to the online editor so that everything can be assembled and the final delivery can be made. We'll cover a little bit of online editing much later in the course when I have created that module content, but we won't be doing any composing. It's worth mentioning that at least one planned practical project for this course uses pre-recorded music, so we will look at editing to music at some point. Right, that's enough beating around the bush. Next, we're going to open up our first practical project and we're going to get started with the assist phase of our edit. So click on through to the next lecture.